Hey everybody, welcome to the 1947 Rise podcast, a podcast that helps India-born, US-trained Indians get integrated into the Indian technology ecosystem and inspires them to move back to India to build massive tech companies and or help enable the tech ecosystem. We do this by interviewing India-born, US-trained Indians who have moved back to India and built massive tech companies themselves and or helped enable the tech ecosystem. I'm excited to have Gajendra Jangid on the 1947 podcast today. Gajendra Jangid is the co-founder and CMO of CARS24. CARS24's mission is to revolutionize the way used vehicles are bought and sold across the world. CARS24 was founded in 2015. A mere 6 years later, they've come a long way. 205 branches across India, presence in 182 Indian cities, channel partners, and a new presence in UAE, Australia, Saudi Arabia, Thailand, and more to come. Prior to founding Cars24, Gajendra worked at Schlumberg. He worked and lived in Texas for almost 3 years. Gajendra, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Shiva. Thanks for having me here.
Awesome. Let's start by you walking us through your journey of growing up in India, and then you ended up moving to Texas for almost 3 years, worked there, lived there, and then you moved back. And why did you move back to India?
Yeah, I would love to. So I'm born and raised in a very small town, far west, central west part of India. The name of the town is called Barmer. It's, if anyone knows Jaisalmer, then we are very close to Jaisalmer and Jodhpur, border touching to Pakistan. So it's a very, very old school town, desert all around. It used to hardly rain, once or twice a year over there. Born and raised with, joint family. My father, my parents, my wife, my mom is a homemaker. My dad used to run a shop. Now he's almost retired. Still, goes there once in a while, but he's a small shop owner. I got two siblings, elder brother and elder sister. So I completed my senior secondary school in Barmer. From there, I think being from a small town, I don't know, to be honest, sometimes I ask myself what led me to become aspirations or what kind of made me become ambitious. Somehow that's something for me to decode. I'm yet to decode, but I think childhood I was ambitious. I wanted to do something different for myself. And I think the core feeling in my head was strong that I want to make my parents proud. Now, what will it take for me to do that? And of course, I can only work on my strengths, and that will hopefully take me to somewhere where I'm to the position where my parents may really feel proud about. So studies was one of them. I tried sports and different things, and of course, I failed miserably, and I wasn't good at it. And being from a small town as well, you don't get much resources to really test your skills as well. But anyways, study was the path of least resistance for me, and I was kind of flew with it. Then it came upon that if I want to do something different with my life, then IIT is a pit stop, and hopefully that will open the door for many different opportunities for me to become successful, and again ultimately make my parents proud. So I cracked IIT. That was back in 2001, so almost 21 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Then I joined IIT Bombay. I think IIT Bombay, 4 years of IIT Bombay was, I would say, life-changing experience for me. There for various reasons actually. Coming from a very small town, now coming to Mumbai, which is a metro, so it's kind of overwhelming to begin with. Very different lifestyle, very different, people. And then second part was that about, it's funny, but it's the rain. Mumbai, it rains all the time. Especially when I entered into IIT, it was month of monsoon, so you can imagine like it's raining all the time. From the town where I came, where we used to see rain only once in a year.
Yeah.
For me, I felt like I'm in I'm in a heaven. It's jungle all around, greenery all around, rains all the time. So to me, it was kind of a very different experience. So, anyways, like I think experience in IIT kind of opened up my real thought process, because over there you are with a bunch of smart people, where you know that you have always so much to learn, because anyone who you speak to really good at something which you are not good at. So that has really made me a lot humble as well in life, that no matter who you think you are good at, there'll be 10 people ahead of you and many other things. So never be proud or become very confident or complacent on the thing that you already know, or and be open to the new things what others are good at, and really learn from them. That really opens up the gate to your mind, whether you are very much receptive to the learning. So that's, I would say. And another part which I personally liked this, which was, of course, IIT is known for providing you, good platform, good resources. But I would say the spectrum of people who I met over there, from northeast, southwest, even there were, plenty of few people from outside India as well. So it's just that when you get to interact with a wide range of personalities coming from different, families, different religion, different castes, different places of India or the world, it just opens up your thought process quite a bit. Then, after IIT, I got into Schlumberger. It's an oil and gas. It was one of the sought after job. It's a job which kind of tests you not only mentally but more on physically side as well, because you earlier years you're supposed to work on the drilling side, where you dig up oil and gas, and you have to, while you are doing your engineering work there, you're also kind of giving a helping hand to all the machines which are out there. So, and given the long hours and the remote locations and the difficult work condition of living in the rig site, it's always mentally and physically challenging. So I got into it. I was lucky enough to be placed in the US. So I spent actually 5 years in the US from 2006 to 10. That again really opened up my thought process even more wider, because US is a place where that you get to meet people from all over the world. So many immigrants, some people coming from different backgrounds. And I think that the kind of job what I was doing, and I never worked out physically as much in my life as much I did in my job. So, so that again kind of made me mentally strong. And you can feel it that when you challenge your boundaries, right? When you challenge your boundaries, then only you expand your boundaries. Right? Once you don't once you don't test your boundaries, you will never be able to expand it. Whether it is working for late hours, whether it is pushing yourself physically, whether even with the people as well, right? And I'll tell you my story over there. For first 3 months, it was very tough for me. When I went to the US, I was in Texas, and over there people were quite rough. Especially the oil and gas was quite rough, and people were not very kind, to be very honest. In a way, it was not that they meant some harm to me, but they were just very rough in their treatment. Yeah. And of course, it was easy for me to just get upset and just become judgmental, and kind of tell myself that they are not worthy enough or they are not good enough. But I was kind of that maybe they have it's all about their upbringing, what they are used to. Why will they change for me? Right? That's how I need to adapt to them. They don't need to adapt to me. That's how I kind of saw the situation. And I think that thought process, that I need to adapt to the environment and not a vice versa, kind of made me realize that I should not be judging them on the way they are. Right? I need to now become part of their ecosystem, then vice versa. And that thought process, that narrative in my head, kind of helped me also become friends. So now I got so many good friends, or lifetime friends over there. So I think over speaking to different people, now you see my journey from a small town of a very remote place of Rajasthan to Mumbai to IIT, and then going to US to Texas. It's just, I think all of this life experiences has helped me become more mature, able to make me more humble, and made me realize that no matter what stage of life you are in, no matter how successful or not successful you are in, you would always have to you know just keep just be yourself at all times, and life will solve for you on its own. You don't just don't try to copy anyone else. Be yourself. Keep learning. Keep your toes on the ground. Be open to the new ideas. Be open to interact with the new people, and don't reject anyone very early.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
that's
no,
how the journey of Schlumberger was. So I think I don't know if I took too long to answer that, but
please
that's
carry
how.
on. I think a lot of
Yeah.
learnings there.
And then after, I think after 5 years in Schlumberger in US, I think I'm very close to my family. I love India. So they are the two things which was, even US has got a. I loved US. It was one of the best time or best phase of my life. But coming to India was my always goal that I don't want to. India has got so much of potential. It has got so much of, I would say, runway to grow. And being in the US, I could really see how the technology is changing the game over there. Like at that point of time, Facebook, Google, even Uber was started blossoming and really impacting everyone's life. It was just there was an era at the time they were really becoming big, and really everybody was it becomes a mass. Like everybody they were able to reach to the masses, and they were making shift in the way everyone was behaving in their daily life. And I could see that same technology disruption will come in India. May not be at that time, but it will sooner or later it will come. And the good part was that many of my batchmates or even senior folks were getting their hands dirty in the startup ecosystem here in India. It wasn't that big, but it was still, you could see it was blossoming. It always, that feeling was always in my head that if I am in India, I would be able to perhaps contribute to it and able to find a way to contribute to it, but not being by living the US. So I think all these two fundamental factors, or three factors, that my love for India, I wanted to close to my family, and again making it change here in India ecosystem, then working elsewhere. I think those three factors kind of made it very easy for me to made a decision to come back to India. My manager really wanted me to tell, and wanted me to hold there. Okay, don't go there so soon. You have a great career ahead. Why don't you stay? But once she saw my reasons, and once he heard my reasons, he was convinced. Okay, I'm with you. So then I moved to India, but changes are not easy. I had to shift it, to do anything in startup. I had to really have a very fundamental shift in what I do. Oil and gas is like in a way, it's like working in the military. You have very different kind of skill set. You have very different kind of people you work with, and it's a very closed environment. And if you want to come out of it, it's not that easy. And I knew that if I want to make an impact, it's a startup would be the one only an area where I can make an impact. Don't want to become small part of a big organization. How I was in Stambaje. So that's all those thoughts were kind of always stayed in my head. And then I was kept looking for ideas, opportunities, meet my friends of college. So the good part was that I was not in rush. I didn't want to make any decision in rush. When I was mentally ready, I was clear in my head that there is no right time to start a startup. Right? When you are very clear in your head that you want to do it, with knowing that outcome can be 0, 1, or anything, right? You perhaps can lose all the money what you have made or all the savings what you had, but you still not regret it, right? When you're mentally ready for it, then only I would make it that bet. Otherwise, I don't want to make that bet, because then you end up realizing that was not the right decision. So it took me some time, to be honest. It took me 2-3 years to really decide that okay, I'm ready to take a plunge. I started discussing with my friends, and finally, when the moment was right, and the idea kind of connected with me. So the genesis of CARS24 in a nutshell was that Vikram, who's my college friend and ex-entrepreneur, he started up Fair Furnish, and he was kind of at the last stages of Fair Furnish, and what was looking to start something different. And he actually tossed this idea of cars to me, that the used car in a way is in India especially is at that point of time was completely unorganized. Buyers and sellers don't get the right car what they really want, or let's say sellers don't get the good price of their car. They always struggle to find a buyer they can trust, and and the process of selling a car is always very tedious for them. And for the buyer, they just don't get the right car, right price, the right time, of the right quality. So fundamentally, I knew, I could see, that the entire ecosystem is broken. That the consumer has very low trust in the used car transaction in India. And I had to be honest, at that point of time, I never bought or sold a used car in India. That was back in 2015 I'm talking about. But I did it in the US. I bought and sold a couple of cars in the US. So I could relate to that. Even the US, I remember my experience of selling a car or buying a car vividly and selling the car vividly. It was not a very easy process. And US, in a way, when it comes to auto space, is one of the, I would say, most developed and biggest market of the world. So the one thing which I could relate to it, that even the US, when things are relatively broken for a normal consumer, then just imagine how it will be here in India. That means how much of disruption and how much of impact you can create.
Yeah.
Because the more it is broken, the bigger the change you can bring and the more impact you can create. Before you do anything, the homework is necessary. I spent actually 2-3 weeks just to understand the used car market in India. I spoke to many of my friends who have bought and sold car in India. I went and met a lot of dealers. So it was a on the foot exercise for, I would say, rigorous exercise for 2-3 weeks before I could really build a strong conviction that yeah, this is something which is a meaty enough problem to solve. And the good part was that nobody has really solved at the fundamental level this problem before in India. So after that, I was convinced you are solving a problem which has not been solved before. Before it is a, you can make an impact at the massive level.
Yeah.
And the third and most important was that you get to work with your friends. And and the fourth, which was not that important but still good, is that you'll be building it from the scratch. So all of those factors kind of, then I said, okay, now it's this time to do this. Let's do this, and you'll be surprised. So in 2015, when I made a choice, okay, I want to now let go of my 10 years old job. I want to just shift completely. I was in Mumbai at that point of time. My second boy was about to born. So in May 2015, my second boy, Kabir, he was born, and it just right a month before, I just left everything. Okay, I want to I want to take my plunge into the startup industry. So that's how that's how CARS24 started.
Yeah, I'm sure you had a very high conviction, and that's how one can take that decision. So, you've been aspirational, from the beginning, highly ambitious, and I think you have a very powerful mindset where being able to tell yourself, hey, I'm not the smartest person in the room. There's a lot to be there's a lot of learnings ahead, and I think your experience at IIT kind of like exposed you to that, where you were meeting people from different worldviews, different cultures. Some of them were better than what you were, and then of course it kind of accelerated when you moved to US, even to a different level. And I think adaptability is very, very important when you're building something at scale. And maybe we can talk about it in depth. How that particular experience kind of like helped you build the culture at Cars24. Because again, like I think adaptability is very, very powerful. And then you came back, and you really, really wanted to work at something that's high impact and you can leave a legacy, right? You can build generational wealth for yourself, for your coworkers, for your stakeholders, and all that stuff. So maybe like we can talk about how do you make difficult decisions, Raju?
Every decision has a very different dynamics to it. But if I had to just distill out what are the common factors which kind of lead you, or which the way you make a difficult decision, right? I think the one thing which you have to think is whether the decision what you are making is a reversible or irreversible, right? So in a startup, many decisions what you are making are both kinds. So whenever you are making a reversible decision, means once you have taken that step and you know that there is no coming back, then you know that you have to think much harder, and the probability of failure has to be very, very much low because the consequences can be very high. As compared to a reversible decision where you know that you started a project, if it works, it's very good. It doesn't work, then we just shut it down and move on. But that doesn't come with a huge cost, except for the few some time what you end up wasting into it. But you have got end up getting a lot of learnings out of it. So that's the first thing you have to differentiate whether the decision is reversible or irreversible. Now, when decision is irreversible, it's not a difficult decision. Even if you think it's a difficult decision, but don't chew on it way too much and spend too much time onto it, and just go for it. Now, when the data is present, because many times in the startup, you will end up having a lot of data and you may not lot of data. It can be both. When data is there, you end up building conviction, and you know the probability of being right is high. Then the decision relatively become easy. But especially when there is no data, or let's say something to do with the people, or something to do with the strategy, where going wrong can cost you. I think the way what we have, the way I learned in the difficult decision is that don't regret anything, no matter what happens. I think because we have realized that the moment you start regretting, you get into a loop, you get into a story which kind of makes you have unnecessary far too guilt than what you should have. Right? You would end up making like, no matter what kind of person who you see, who you admire, right? That person has made a lot of mistakes, right? You pick up your role model. So knowing that all your role models have made tons of mistakes. So when you don't get emotionally so much invested in that decision, it's not a difficult decision at the end of the day. It's just in your head, whether you're what like to call it. So detaching your emotions out of the decisions, and just one thing which we have started doing, or at least I kind of note it down, is before I make any decision, I really write down what are the factors that has led me to take that decision. Because what happens based on the outcome, after a few months down the line, you will try to justify based on the outcome, right? Whether if it is wrong, then you say maybe the person was bad, or this has done this, or external environment was not good. But when you go back to your drawing, when you go back to your documents you've written, that may tell you the completely different story. Because your human mind is kind of has a lot of biases built in. So it's always good to record why you're making that decision, what factors you have considered, and then so that after 6 months, 9 months, or 3 months, or whatever time period that has, and whatever that when it's time to make a in a way decide whether the decision was right or not, you can go back and you're not being influenced by any other factors. And that has happened, by the way, many times. You would see team talking so many different views when the decision goes for a toss, it doesn't work out. But we know fundamentally, and to be honest, everything has a lot of context to it as well. Like how the startup right now, everybody is talking about frugality, everybody is talking about EBITDA, and now why it is important for the startup. Of course, everybody knew about it a year ago or 2 years ago. Now the context has changed. So whatever decision you have made in the past, which was right at that point of time, now in the current context, that doesn't look right. But when you know that you can call your management, okay, they made the wrong choice to spend so much of money. Now see where they got us into. But context was different, and the decision was at that point of time, that was the best decision to make, right? So now you are going to call because context has changed. Then when you have all of those written down, no, because your memory is also, by the way, nobody has a perfect memory. So somehow writing all of it down helps me a lot to really recalibrate myself and not get too much influenced by the outcome of the decision.
Love the framework. Go for it.
And I like to quote Dhoni as well. Like I'm fortunate enough to interact with Dhoni quite a bit. He is our brand ambassador, and I think one thing which he says, I believe in and practiced throughout his life, is that, because we all like to ask him that question, right? How there's so much of pressure you handle, right? How do you really cope up with that? And his answer is very simple, and very, I would say, to the point, that I take one ball at a time. I don't look at the outcome and see that this is the outcome I need to achieve. I look at one ball at a time, and I just follow the system. I just follow the system. I know what inputs will lead me to output. I don't care. I'm not. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But whether you have the right input to achieve that, yes or no, and whether you are playing, you are not procrastinating, you are not just thinking too much about what's going to happen in the future. You are just taking one ball at a time, and it should happen, right? You should get the best out of it. So he explains it in a much more better way than I did, but at least I understand what he's saying.
No, it's been focused on the inputs and the journey, and then everything else is a byproduct. And since you've really liked his philosophy of this framework, Gaju, where, like, of course, CARS24 today is a word, right? people know if I tell somebody Cars24, they'll know what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
Meaning you've scaled it, but there's no the journey is not easy, right? It's not straight line. Were there times, like specific times, where you were like, man, maybe let's try a completely different business model or different industry? Point is like, completely switching. Like you thought, okay, this is it, done.
Yeah.
And if there was a time, like, how did you overcome it?
There were a lot of times actually, but I think demonetization was one of the time where we really thought that okay, shit, whatever we have built. So we started in August 2015. Next month is our 7th anniversary. So, and of course, 2015 we started, and if you remember, November 16, demonetization happened, right?
Mhm.
So, and the used car ecosystem was like cash was was a big part of used car transactions. Sellers used to wanted to get money in cash, and buyer wants to buy cash for whatever reasons, right? And the moment the cash was completely gone from the system, our sales plummeted. All the business we created so far, let's say from 100 it went down to 30%. Now that really you know that really changed all over, not only next few months number, but the future, the future as well. That will now this industry grow at the same scale, same rate at which we have thought. Now if everyone has to really deal you know uh, cashless transaction, banking transaction. Is a consumer going to adapt to it? And you're not sure, especially when couple of months number were looking so low. We really thought at that point of time that what's going to happen, we really don't know. Of course, at that point of time, the good part about us was that Shiva, that we always had a maintained a very healthy unit economics. Our balance sheets were healthy. So what question that gave us is that we had time to think. We were not in hurry to make a decision.
Yeah.
And that over there we just played wait and watch. And what we could do is again adapt. If the country is moving to cashless ecosystem or cashless transactions, let's just move that. So we took that as an opportunity. We took that as an opportunity and really completely wiped out cash from our transactions and only switched to banking transaction. Of course, that for a few months it hurt our business, which was already down anyway. So I said, we don't have much to lose. So let's just live with it, and hopefully, when we put this constraint on our head, we'll be able to find solution. And if the economy grows and the it comes back on track, then hopefully it will also come back to a previous level. And good part was that within 3 to 6 months we were back on track, and I think country was back on track as well.
Mhm.
And we kind of reached back to our previous level of demonetization and able to ship that sale. But one good thing which has happened is that we kind of moved completely cashless, and that actually added it actually, I would say, reduced a lot of operational logistics for us and made our system more efficient.
Mhm.
Uh, in hindsight, we would not have taken that hard decision, because that would have resulted into a lot of loss of revenue, a loss of transaction. But long time, that constraint, that the one event kind of made us take the decision quickly and for long run. And so so one thing which came really clear to me, that everything which happens bad to you, which kind of feel bad at that moment, will have some ray of hope for you for some other dimension, or some in some other, by other means. So you should always look for that opportunity a challenge may bring you, and cash out on it without without thinking twice. And so I think demonetization was one of them. After that, some roadblocks we faced was GST. GST rollout was another tough phase to pass through, because of so many changes happening
Mhm.
in the outside world. NBFC crisis was another, because financing was also kind of became part of this process, because of course cash is gone now. The bank, everything is happening through bank, and financing was again you know so NBFC kind of tightening up of lending in this space also overall hurt the growth of used car category. So that was another storm we passed through. Then COVID, of course, right? The biggest one, 2020 was in itself is a that at that point in time again we thought I don't know what's going to happen now. That was I would say so far in last 7 years. I think the after COVID demonetization, like COVID was the place where we could think of let's get shit. Now
Yeah.
everything is everything goes to the goes down now. I think we can just pray for it. Let's see what happens. But I think in tough times, one thing which you will know, in good times, the organization will automatically moves and everybody will have a positive, spirit. But in the bad times, you will really know how your organization behaves, how your team behaves, whether they leave you or they stick with you, whether they are, they want to ship, sail this storm with you or without you, right? So I think going through that entire COVID episode was actually very very touchy moments, and at that point of time I personally felt proud of what we have built at CARS24, the organization what we have built, the people who we have at leadership level, at every level, how much we all helped out at each other during tough time, how much we really had patience, because there's a lot of trust you had to have for the company and company to the employees at that point of time, and we had that deep level of trust that really binded us and which kind of helped us sail through this tough phase. Of course, after 6 months COVID passed, we kind of realized the the positive side of in a way positive side of COVID onto our business. Used car category has got a huge boost because of COVID. Everybody wanted to switch to their own personal vehicles, and that gave us a good. And we never saw it coming, to be honest. Right at that point of time when the COVID took place, we kind of didn't realize this fundamental shift in consumer behavior is going to happen. But suddenly we saw a paradigm shift in consumer behavior where people are now more looking to buy cars, and kind of everything switched. So there's so much of change. Once you are thinking you are going down, ship is going to sink, and then suddenly you are getting your ship is going to get bigger, right? So too much of a action in very short period of time. But all of this really makes your company become more stronger.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, back to your points early on where, you're good today, but that doesn't mean you'll be good tomorrow. So you just
Yeah,
don't know what's coming next.
yeah.
And adaptability, I think, is very powerful, right? I think it's mostly about adaptability and staying at it long enough, and you'll figure it out. And if you're
Right.
going after a massive, mission, challenges, they are supposed to be there. If they're not there, then you're not going after a massive problem.
Yeah.
And Gaju, we'll switch gears here. Uh, you know, maybe like an incident or a book you read or an article that kind of like just became a turning point for you in life.
I think I will not say every it's a one book which has you know I think every stage of life. And to be honest, let me just rewind myself a bit. I wasn't much into the books. Almost 7 years ago, 6 7 years ago, I was not much into the books. And to be honest, the reason why I was not into the books, because from the since childhood you are always reading your curriculum books to get ahead in your life, in your career. So I kind of always thought books as a milestone to achieve a milestone, right? You read the book to achieve a milestone, and after that, that book, you don't need to read anything. Anyway, so that's how somehow I got wired, and later on, like after I would say IIT, and after a few years of IIT, I was not just learning everything from the life experiences than reading any book. I think one of the life changing moments, to be honest, for me was able to cultivate the habit of reading book. That is that itself is a life
Yeah.
changing moment for me. Of course, it was not one day suddenly I started reading books. It was a very slow journey, and of course, I had a very extremely smart folks around me who were reading books. That made me realize that when they are reading books and they are able to learn so much from the books, then why I'm so much why I'm not into it.
Yeah.
And that's how kind of made me think that perhaps I should start reading the books, and that will help me again. And ultimate aim was to learn and able to apply those learning to the business and the life. What you deal, the challenges of life, what you deal on a daily basis. Now coming to the books, Shiva, every context is different. I think in initial days when we had to make a lot of tough decisions, I think any startup, any budding entrepreneur, I would advise him to read the hard thing about hard things. I think over there is all those real life example of, when do you know when you're in a tough situation, and when you need to make a tough decision in an environment which you have not seen before. I think that book had given us a lot of thoughts which we could not thought before. So I personally learned a lot from that book. There's a simple book called The Art of Thinking Clearly. So the Art of Thinking Clearly is about a book. It just lays out all the biases, most common biases a human have, and able to tell you what fault you can have in your decision making. I think that's number two. I'm just calling out those books which I personally feel I go back to once in a while, because books which you go back to, once in a while, that book has got a lot of impact on you, right? You don't need to just pick it. That book will come to you on its own. I think these two books, and I think I will have some recency bias over there in the book lately. What I wrote or read is Delivering Happiness. It's Delivering Happiness. Like, I wanted to learn more and more about what does it really mean to build a culture which is employee centric and customer centric, and I landed up on a book, Delivering Happiness. It's written by Zappos founder, and it's one of the craziest book I have read on how to build a culture. I think if you've not read it, please read it.
Yeah.
That's made a recent impact on me. I think these three books I could recall. Those two are the first two are the one which was I read long time ago, but I keep coming back to it. I think another book I would like to highlight is written by Abhishek Satapathy, the CEO Factory. The CEO Factory, Sudhir Satapathy, sorry, not Abhishek, Sudhir Satapathy. He's ex HUL CXO. I think he has written the book about how HUL is able to produce a CXO for the Indian business hubs, and I think his life experiences in that book kind of made me think a lot, and the way he all the examples and anecdotes in that book was really powerful.
Thanks for the recommendations. And were you able to find a good book for the customer experience? I think you had tweeted about it, right?
Yeah. So Delivering Happiness was